What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode. Last episode we talked about my Indiana deer. This episode is going to be primarily about Kansas deer. So, thanks everybody for hopping on this evening and or listening whenever you're listening to this episode. A couple things before we start. It's Black Friday week. There's all kinds of sales going on right now. ASIO Gear has a big sale going on. Actually, got me some stuff from them this week. So if you need any hunting gear, make sure you go over there. They got the midweight hoodies. What I would buy if you're going to go buy one piece. Their Sherpa line stuff is also awesome. Anything that you're going to buy from, you got a lifetime warranty. So if you need any gear for any season, right now is probably a good time to pick that up. 50% off a lot of their stuff on their website. Latitude Outdoors, same thing. They got a pretty good Black Friday sale going on. If you need saddle equipment, some ropes, carabiners, packs, that the Ranger 22 and 33, those are the packs I like to use. All that stuff should be on sale here on Black Friday. It's not going to, if you're listening to this later on in the year, it might be over. Guys over at Hawke Optics, they got retailers all over the country. If you guys need any optics, I use them a lot in Kansas, which we'll get into that. Also getting ready to leave this weekend for a rifle hunt, and got my 6.5 my Montana rifle, my 6.5 Creedmoor topped with a Hawke scope. Really like that thing. They also have a really nice 22 rifle scope. That's pretty cool. Has some 22 rifle reticles on it. So go over to Hawke Optics, check them out. Razor Broadheads. Dave was with me in Kansas on my Kansas hunt. Razor Broadheads. If you guys need some really good cut on contact, single or double bevel broadheads, it's really hard to beat those guys over at Razor Broadheads. And then the guys over at Stealth Outdoors, Lou, I always say the guys, it's just Lou over there. I think he has one other employee. If you need any tape to silence your gear, make sure you go over to stealthoutdoors.com and get you some stealth strips. They also have a bunch of clothing options and hunting beast gears over there. Hunting beast. Sorry. Hunting Beast merch is over there. So make sure you go check out stealthoutdoors.com. And in the description, all the discount codes are for you guys to use if you want to. And then if you're in Northern Indiana, go over to Bass and Bucks, get your bow worked on, get you some. They got a really, really big gun store in there too. I always want to shout those guys out. They helped me this year when I needed a bow. So anyway, Kansas. Overall, I'm going to kind of walk through the entire trip with you guys, my thoughts on it, and go from there. So, first of all, getting out there was absolutely horrendous. I don't know what was going on. I left at like noon on was that a Friday, and drove. It's like a 10-hour drive. Supposed to be a 10-hour drive for me. Man, I didn't get there until midnight, and it was just like, just traffic after construction. I felt like I was standing still more than I was driving at some point in time, but that's here nor there. It's just whenever you're by yourself, and man, it was a long trip. So that's how it started off. Kind of rough. I was supposed to probably be the first one there and end up being the last one there. But between Illinois and the Kansas line was just rough. Probably a timing thing. How I was traveling, probably just a timing thing. So the first morning we got there, and I had a lot of hunts on this. I pretty much hunted all day, every day. I was out and about somewhere. So the video was very condensed compared to the footage I got throughout the week. I just didn't want to make a 2-hour video. It's been too long for what it was. First day we got there, and really the first day was spent driving around. It's a Saturday, and the reason I wanted to, this had been November 15th. The reason I wanted to drive around was to kind of see what the pressure was like. And then, hop into a couple public pieces to see what we wanted to do. We were staying at a rancher's bunkhouse or cabin. There's a rancher that Dave met there a few years ago, and I've gotten to know too, that lets us stay in his cabin. So we were hunting about an hour and a half, like around that cabin is kind of where all of us are hunting. Me, Dave from Razor Broadheads, and Patrick that's on here from time to time. So I branched off that first, kind of got up in the morning, got my gear together because it was kind of a mess and unorganized. I organized my gear and took off, shutter bows, took off. And the first spot I went to was a spot I had on my map that was along a river, and it looked awesome. Honestly, there was a lot of sign, not a whole lot of foot traffic. I found, one set of boot tracks in there. Now, granted, it was pretty dry, so some of the sign and whatnot wasn't showing up real well. But nonetheless, it seemed like there was not too bad of pressure there. And one of the stigmas that Kansas has gotten in the last few years is very high pressure. We all know that the point creep has came up on Kansas, where used to be able to draw it pretty much every year. Now it's every 2 years. So there's definitely been more people going to Kansas than in the past for whatever reason. You can have your own reasons that's happening. Anyways, I did. So I scouted that property. I really liked it. There was 2 spots that I really liked. I think I probably could have went there and done pretty well, but I ended up not ever going back there again, just circumstances that I'll get into later. I went to another property, and then this property, and this was like maybe 1 o'clock now. It took me a long time to scout this property. It was a pretty big property. Second piece, went to, and there was a truck park there, which one truck wouldn't have, one person wouldn't have really bothered me, but I saw the fellers walking in, and there was 3 guys. There's 3 guys in one truck. So I was like, oh, that's a lot. This piece was only like maybe 100 acres. In Kansas, the publics, some of them, they're, the average wise, they're not real big, like the Weehaws and the public and whatnot. But there were three young guys. It was good to see some young guys out and about. But they were in a real nice pickup, and they all 3 were going in there. I'm like, I'll just leave them alone. So I backed out, went to my third spot real quick. When I got there, across the road from where I was sitting, their farmer was picking beans, and he was almost done with the field. So I drove by, and I'm like, oh, I feel like that's a good sign. Like maybe some deer will be coming off the public into this fresh cut bean field. Deer seem to like to do that whenever there's like a fresh field that just got cut. They get curious and they come out there and take a look around and mingle around at night in those fields to, I don't know, get used to their new surroundings, or I don't know, deer are just curious animals. So I ended up hopping into this spot. I saw one other truck there. He was kind of lingering around, like driving around real slow. You could definitely tell he was a hunter. But I was parked there first, and he ended up kind of just moving on. This particular spot, the adjacent property that was private looked really, really good from the map. It's like a CRP field with some decent sized wood lots in it, and it just looked really good. I ended up getting in a tree that was like pretty close to the property line. I actually backed off about 20 yards from the property line and sat there. I really wanted to just kind of glass into that CRP field that was on private to see if there's any big deer in the area. And see what was coming out of there into the public, because the public had beans on it, crops. I set up in there, and I actually saw quite a few deer. So it was a really good first sit. I saw right away, saw a pretty nice 8-point buck, just like a 100-inch 8-pointer, not a shooter or anything, but just a deer that you saw and you're like, oh, all right, and he was out. He popped out of he was in the public. He was not on the private, but he was in the public, and he popped out of I was sitting on a ditch line that went through this, like you could imagine a great big giant bean field, and there was just a ditch line in the middle of it. That's all the property was. And he came out of the ditch that I was sitting on, and he actually mingled around out in the bean field, and then he bedded down in the bean field. He laid in that bean field for probably an hour. And actually, I was watching him, he laid down, and then I couldn't see him anymore. And then later on, he finally popped back up, and he just beelined straight across, just walking. He wasn't running, just walked across the beans into the private over there. Then about an hour before dark, I heard some kind of rustling over on the private. and I got my binoculars out and was glassing, and there was like 3 does and then another buck chasing in the beans, or in the CRP field. Buck was not a shooter. I think it was just a little 1.5-year-old buck pushing some does around. Fast rewind that morning. Patrick saw, whenever he took off, he saw a really big buck from the road. And those guys, Patrick and Dave, they did a lot of like morning scouting, driving around on the road. I didn't really do that. Should have I? Maybe I should have a couple mornings. I don't know. It worked out for me, but Patrick saw a really nice buck, like a 150 class 9-pointer, like a really big buck, big old frame on him, just a big Kansas buck. It was on a piece of public, really awkward small piece that didn't have much on it. And we kind of, he tried to hunt it, never saw the deer. He saw a couple does, and that was about it. And we kind of came to the conclusion that it was just a coincidence that he drove by and that buck was there. I think he was probably with some does, and they happened to be passing through right there. He put a little bit of effort into trying to find it and never found that buck again. But it was an exciting first day is what I'm getting at. We saw some good deer. I don't know exactly. I can't remember what Dave ended up seeing the first morning, but it wasn't nothing groundbreaking, kind of like me. Next day, so I was going to go back to where Patrick spent pretty much the whole day scouting after he messed with that buck. The next day the wind was wrong for where I scouted at the river that I scouted on. So Patrick was like, he was in a different area, like completely. I was south, he was north. He was like, well, this spot, I'm not going to get to it. It looks really good. You should go in there this morning. And he scouted it the day before. And so I went in there. He actually went after that big buck that he saw. So I went and sat in there. He did look really good. And it was just a property that had some crops on it. It had some real nice thickets on it, 2 creeks that went through it. Just a beautiful looking property. Had a couple of boot tracks in the field where people had been hunting it. So I went and set up in the dark, picked a really good tree in the dark, which that can always be kind of iffy. I got up in the tree and I'm like, man, this spot is going to be good. Like I could see this spot being real good. And I sat there, and finally about 10:30, a little forky came through, and that was the only thing I saw that morning. 11:30, I got down, met up with Patrick because he was hunting just down the road. Patrick made me a dang cheeseburger, which was good, nice of him in his van. He has one of those as a Tiffin, really nice camper vans that he just stayed in the whole time. Me and him went and scouted another property so this is Sunday now. I got there Saturday. This is Sunday. We went and scouted a property together that we both had marked on the map. He had went in there the day before, I think, just buzzed in there real quick and looked around. So we went in there and kind of tag teamed that spot and got two spots picked out. And essentially the property made a big, like, there was a big ridge that kind of horseshoed around the property, and there was a low area. So he set up top there were some scrapes and rubs up there, looked really good. And I went down in the bottom. So we kind of had it covered. If they traveled the top, he'd have a shot at them. If they travel the bottom, I'd have a shot at it right away. Like right as soon as we set up, we probably got set up at 2:30, and it got dark around 6:30, something like that, 6 o'clock. Patrick had a spike come in. So I'm like, man, it's a good start. I ended up sitting in there, and finally, right before dark, I got a little footage of him too. This half rack deer that had his busted off I think it was his left side busted off, came through. Got me excited at first. I was like, oh man, there's a nice one, He came through. He was probably a 2-year-old. He might have been a 3-year-old, but probably a 2-year-old. He came through, 10 yards. I could have smoked him if I wanted to. He was setting up there. And then on the top where Patrick was, and we were sitting really far away from each other, probably hundreds and hundreds of yards away from each other. There's no way we were going to be in each other's way. But up top, I could hear some deer. I could see, I could silhouette some deer up top. And there was another little buck and a couple does up there. And that that doe, a doe up there blew at something. It wasn't me. I don't know who it was blowing at. She was blowing at, but she blew, and that half rack just beelined up the mountain or up the hill up to her where she blew. And it was pretty funny because in this particular spot, it's like there's like a rock ledge around the tops where like it's pretty steep, and he just like bounded right up this cliff essentially to get up to that doe that had been blowing. But it's like he didn't care if it was a danger sign. He just blew. I don't know if that doe was blowing at that little buck to try to get him to leave her alone or what it was, but that half rack was very interested in it. And he's probably an aggressive deer, I have to imagine, because he broke off points and everything else. He's probably been fighting. So I'm like, well, this is a good spot, in the bottom there. I was in a bottom hub, and there was, let me think here, two ridges that came down to me, and then there was two drainages that came to me. So I had a lot of stuff right there. And where I was sitting at, and I mentioned that rock ledge on the tops, where I was sitting at, the deer like to come through because the ledge was smaller. And so they could get up it a little easier, just a path of least resistance. So I sat there for the next 3 or 4 days. Got a visitor. What's up? What happened? Your brother get mad at you? Yeah. Oh no. So I sat there for the next, I sat there. That was Saturday. That was Sunday night. I sat there Monday morning, Monday evening, Tuesday morning. And so I had 3, like a full day and then a morning sit there. I did see a couple other 2-year-olds that were just decent deer, nothing crazy. Just kind of the same caliber as that half rack deer. So finally I'm like, I'm going to make a move. And up top in front of me, kind of closer to the property line, there looked like a really good ridge up there. And you could see that there was like some pines and some mixture of CRP up there. So like, I think that could be a good spot for like a downwind side of bedding, because I was going to get a south wind that evening. It'd been Tuesday evening. I'm like, I'm going to make a move up there. I got up there, rubs everywhere. There's a fresh scrape up there right outside of this bedding area. I'm like, heck yeah, So I pick a tree out for that evening sit. The wind was wrong for the evening set, so I went and sat somewhere else that evening. And I don't remember exactly if I saw much there. I don't think I did. I don't even remember exactly where I sat at, to be honest with you. So I went and set up, or I went and hunted that evening, came back the next morning and sat in that spot up the ridge. And right at dark, or right before light, while it was still dark, I heard something skirt around me. And I was like, oh, that, dang, I couldn't tell. It was probably 50 yards from me, but it was too dark. I couldn't tell what it was. Just tell it was a deer. The way, just the cadence it was walking and how it was acting. So I ended up sitting in there until like 11 o'clock and had seen 0 deer. So I'm like, all right, well, I need to get down and do some scouting around, or something, find something different. I don't think this is the spot. I literally was starting to pack up. I put my camera in my bag and I started hearing some footsteps and I'm like, oh man. And here you go, buddy. Here comes a pretty nice 8-pointer down to the scrape I was sitting over. Again, probably a 3-year-old. Initially, when I saw him, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if he's a shooter. When he got down closer to me, I'm like, maybe he is, especially since it was, wasn't early in the trip anymore. So I tried to get my camera back out, and he caught me. I don't know if I was going to shoot him anyways, but it wasn't going to happen. I spooked him, and he blew it. I got very little footage of it, just with my 360 camera. He blew 100 times, and it was done. So then I got down. I'm trying to think here. That would have been Wednesday morning now. Okay. So I get down 11:30, whatever time it was. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to drive towards the cabin a little bit, because we were like an hour and 20 minutes from the cabin. And I'm like, I got frustrated with myself. I'm like, dude, I am just sitting in this pinch. I haven't moved around much. Like, I know how to kill a deer. Like, and I said it in the video, like, I feel like I was just not doing my own thing. Like I was like, I don't know. I was doing my own thing, but I wasn't doing what I knew was right. And that's why I named this podcast, Do What Needs to Be Done, Not What You Feel Like Doing. Like on hunts, sometimes we get not lazy, but we just get complacent, or I don't know. You got to keep your mind focused and try to do what needs to be done. Not what you feel like doing. Like I feel like I need to sit in these rut pinches all day. And maybe that would have worked the first week of November, but we were there the second and third week of November. It's different. The deer are doing something different. Like I'm pretty sure they were kind of locked down with does, the big deer, and the little deer were chasing, or trying to get the scraps. And I'm like, finally I got aggravated myself. I'm going to go start looking at public pieces, because they're spread out all over Kansas, that deer hunters are not going to want to deer hunt. And I'm like, I bet you there's a doe somewhere that has a big buck with her. So I started looking. I went by one spot, and then when I was driving out, it was probably 12:30. I saw a big deer with a doe. I think she had a doe with her. It doesn't matter. I saw a big deer on private, no public around, just driving around. That I'm like, ooh, they're out and about. The deer's still moving. So I drove by one public piece that looked pretty good. I was like, man, this is an option where I could get here and glass a little bit. Now I had to go home the next day. So that was Wednesday. I had to go home Thursday. So I went by another piece, and it was a pretty decent sized piece, not crazy big. But there was an old house by it. And I pull into the parking lot. They had parking lots on both sides of the public. And I get out, and I just walk around the front of my truck, and I'm just going to go scout it real quick, look in these CRP fields. And there's not hardly any trees not hardly any sittable trees on this field. It's like a bunch of Osage trees or Osage bushes and just real shrubby pines and whatnot. Just probably a handful of trees you could really set in with a stand or saddle. And I literally get out, go around the front of my truck, and I look, and there's a rack going through some of those shrubby trees. I'm like, oh, geez. I'm talking to guys like 40 yards from the parking lot. He's sitting there. Like I was in bow range of him when I saw him. And he didn't care about me. I don't know if he probably didn't see me pull up. But he just cruised off, like just walked off looking for a doe. So I waited for him to get out of sight, and he ended up getting out of sight. I grabbed my rattle antlers and my bow, get down in that little spot, because I couldn't exactly tell what he was. I'm like, man, maybe it was a good one. I couldn't tell. I hit the rattle and horns together. Here he comes back in. It ended up being a 2-year-old again. It was like, dude, I didn't see any mature deer until the deer I shot, but it was a 2-year-old. And he came back in, and I couldn't get the dang thing to leave. Like I could not get him to leave. I spooked him. He blew at me. Still didn't leave. And then another 2-year-old comes in. Go play with your brother. And so another 2-year-old comes in. I'm like, go on, these things, leave me alone. I got to get, I wanted to go scouting this property to find a place to set up this evening. And he came in, another little 7-pointer. The first one was a little 8-pointer. The second one was a little 7-pointer. He came in, and I couldn't get him to leave, man. Like they blew at me. The one blew at me. The second one blew at me and left. I'm like, okay, good. I like stood up, was getting my stuff together. And I hear something. I look up, and then he's coming back, and he's like doing their thing, and he came into 30 yards again. I'm like, man, these things are dumb, And I was joking. I think, I don't know if this is true or not. It probably is dependent on the deer and the time of year. But like, I feel like this deer are like 2 years behind on maturity. Like their 2-year-olds are acting like fawns. It's like in Indiana or in the South or where Michigan, where we were, all from, we were talking like, yeah, dude, there's no way a 2-year-old buck would tolerate any of this stuff. Like I had these 2-year-old bucks coming downwind of me when I was sitting in that little pinch. Like, you'd always give up one side of the drainage there, because you can't have a wind that goes straight in the air or anything unless you got thermals in the mornings. But I had bucks cruising on the downwind side of me. I didn't seem to care, and it's like, wow, it's crazy, but that's here nor there. Now mature bucks, they care out there still. But so I get done with these horsing around with these deer, rattling them in. Rattling wasn't great. I don't think it would have been effective on a big buck unless it was like they were in between does or something. Maybe you could rattle one in, but rattling is you have to be very strategic. Like you got to be in a spot the deer can't see you. The deer have to be in the right mood. They have to be away from their does. Just a lot of things have to line up to rattle in a deer. And people that are good at it are good at it. Some people rattle in spots that are more harmful than helpful. So you just gotta be careful when you're rattling. That CRP field was good because I was down in a little hole. A deer had to come down into the ditch. It's called a ditch. It's like a low area to see what was down there. I get up into the CRP field to scout it. And again, like I said, there's like a couple rows of trees in there, and most of them are these Osage bushes. And I get in there, and all of a sudden I look to my left and there's a giant rub on a tree. I'm like, okay, there's some, which that's not uncommon in Kansas to see a giant rub, but I'm like, okay, that looks good. Good sign there's the deer in the area, or was a deer in the area. Hop out in the CRP field. You got some really good trails that come out of into the CRP, out of these little Osage bushes. If you can imagine the tree line of bushes kind of made a big horseshoe in the middle of a CRP field. And they kind of, on the horseshoe, in the throat of the horseshoe, there was a little like old cattle pond right there. And then the Osage bushes made a horseshoe around the cattle pond. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to get up, and I picked out a tree. I was only like 150 yards from the parking lot. I'm like, I'm going to get up in this tree right here. I can glass all this CRP. And I still think like I was kind of in the corner of the trees to where I think like deer could come out here and I may get a shot at them. I know I get set up. I'm only like 8 feet off the ground, and I look over into the Osage bushes and I see like some white, walking through there, just a tail. And there was a group of 3 does in there. I'm like, oh heck yeah. And they actually went towards my truck somewhere. I never saw them again. And then just a few minutes later, little buck following them. So I'm like, I've already seen 4 deer and been up here for 20 minutes, So I sit up there another, 30 minutes, and I'm looking at this pond, and that pond, I'm looking back, I'm glad I didn't, but I almost went and like scouted that pond to see how many deer tracks was in it. And I'm like, maybe I'll sit that pond because it was kind of warm. The weather was not ideal while we were out there. It was like 70 during the day and, 50s in the morning, pretty warm. There was one morning when it got down to 37, but it got into the mid 60s that day too. It was like 50s and 70s type days. But I didn't walk over there. I'm like, I don't want to muck up all this CRP field. Maybe there'd be and it was kind of close to those Osage bushes that I thought the deer would be bedding in. So I'm sitting up there looking, and I look out to that pond, and there's a doe out there. I'm like, oh dang, that's good. And there's another deer. And about that time, I kind of see a cage, a rack kind of spin. And I'm like, ooh, there's a deer. That's the biggest deer I've seen this week. I couldn't tell much about him. I could just see a bunch of points like wrapped around, I'm like, dang, that's a nice deer. And my initial thought was, that's a big one. Like I think that's a big deer. So I got my Hawke Optics out, and I'm really glassing them. And people were asking me, I had the Frontiers, 10x42s is what I was using. They're really good optics. And that doe would move out into the pond. He would follow her. He was always about 20 yards behind her, kind of just mingling around her. And they drank a little out of the water. They mingled around, never left that pond for probably 10, 15 minutes. And then I'm like, I'm praying, like, 'cause this is my last hunt. I'm like, man, God, just give me a sign of what I need to do to kill this deer. I try not to ask God for deer. Like because I don't need one. It's not something that I need. Like I'll just have conversation with him. I think that's all God wants you to do is have a relationship with him. Not all He wants you to do, but I think it's okay to pray and just talk to God as long as you're being direct with Him. I think that's a good thing. And I was just like, man, just tell me what I need to do to kill this deer. And as soon as I got done praying that prayer, I kind of was like watching him, and he just walks up. The doe walks up, and he walks up out of the pond onto the bank away from me, kind of walking away from me. And here I think, they're going to walk away, we're going to walk out of my life here. And he just beds down right there, like perfect spot. He beds down. And around this pond, there's some pines and stuff where it's kind of hidden, at least the left side of it's hidden. And he beds down. I'm like, oh, I'm like, I'm getting down and stalking this thing. And this was about 4 o'clock. So I had plenty of time. I had 2 hours of daylight left. So I hopped down and I couldn't film any of this thing. I didn't have the right gear to film a stalk. Like I should have had my head thing on. I didn't have it with me. Didn't think about it. I hadn't used it all week. I could have had I had this camera with me, which this exact camera setup. Just didn't have a good place to, I couldn't do anything. It was a mess. But so I took some clips with my phone as best I could. I stalked into the CRP field and got kind of crawled up to him. He was probably, the pond was about 120 yards from me. So they were probably on past that pond about 50 yards. So they were inside 200 yards. But I get into the tree line where all the pines are, and I crawl all the way up to this pond. And the pond has like a bank that goes up, and then it flattens out for maybe 5 yards and then goes down to the pond. And I get to that little low area, and I'm looking, I'm like, oh, there's a doe out in the pond. I'm like, yes, that has to be the doe that buck's with. But then I look, and there's another doe. That, off to the side, I'm like, maybe it's a different group or something. I'm like, crap, man, these does got me pegged here. I can't move. I couldn't go any farther. That's as far as I could have gone. Because ideally, I'd like to have gotten a little bit closer around that pond, but I couldn't. There was two does literally 40 yards from me as I was stalking. Conditions were not conducive to stalking. Like, it was still, there was barely any wind. It was dry. It sucked. So I was like, I can't go any farther here. So I'm sitting on the side of this bank with I got my arrow knocked. I have a couple of gaps, and I ranged the other side of the pond at 7 yards. I'm like, okay. Those does, the two does that were in the pond, walked off into the CRP. So as soon as they walked off, I got up on the bank of the pond, or the levee of the pond, I guess you would call it, the levee of the pond. And there was a pine tree on the side of the pond. So I kind of like hunkered into that pine tree a little bit, and I got my bow ready. I'm just sitting there, and I'm like my holes to shoot across the pond, which is where the deer was, aren't great, but I'm like, I can make this work. And I'm getting ready. About that time, I see another doe across the pond, and they're across the pond up around where that buck was bedded. And I'm like, well, that's probably them, And I'm like, well, crap. That's at the time where I was like 60 yards from him. I'm like, that's too far. Then I see the buck right behind her, like he has been all evening, just, staying with her. And they get up into across the pond there. And I got clips of this for you guys on the video. If you haven't watched it, it'll be in the description of this podcast. But there's some little shrubby trees there. And all of a sudden, about 60 yards away, roughly, the doe's kind of working to the right. She stops and's feeding, and that buck starts rubbing these trees that just like going crazy on these little trees. So I'm like, okay, it's now or never. I got to get off this pond bank because I can't shoot him. I move in I moved 10 yards real quick, like crawls, like not crawl, but I was on my crouched down. I crouched up I crawled up to him on the other side of this pine tree so I could have some clear shooting up there. I ranged the tree that he was rubbing at 51. He was right in front of it, and I pulled back, and about the time I pulled back, he kind of stopped rubbing it, and he turned perfectly to look at her. And I think maybe she was onto me. I wasn't really focusing on her, but she was definitely looking my way when I pulled my bow back. I kind of saw a corner of her eye, her like shift, and that made him kind of stop and look over her way. And he squared up broadside to me. And he was almost perfectly 50 yards. The tree he was rubbing, he was in front of, and I ranged that at 51. I had my 50-yard pin, and I had been practicing I've been practicing a lot. He was not focused on me at all. I squeezed it off, and I just smoked him. That 150 wide cut razor, that's a vented broadhead. I'm a big fan of vented broadheads. Some people don't like them. I think they fly better than solid broadheads. The vented broadheads, they have less drag because there's holes in the broadhead, so there's less drag in my mind. I don't know if that's true or not, but makes me feel good about it. I went over there. He runs off, and he's clearly not good. Like the sound was like that, like it was a perfect sounding arrow, collapsed his lungs. I went over there. The arrow was laying there, just laying like perfectly on top of the grass to where I could find it real quick. Really good blood on it. And I was down in that pond bank, like right on the edge of the water. So I could just see him run off, and I saw him run for about 40 yards, and I could see he was like front end was down, tail was tucked, and he was like struggling, And the doe, another good sign was the doe kind of went one way and he kind of went another. Like he's like, oh crap, he's not doing good. And come to, I started trailing him, and it was pretty evident that I hit him good, pretty good blood. And he'd only went like 80 yards. He probably went another 40 or 50 yards from where I last saw him, and fell over there dead. So it took me about 10 minutes to find him. And yeah, that was it. Is it the mailman? Okay. Just stay here for a minute. Is Hayes in there? Okay. It's probably the mailman, buddy. It's about mail time. Sorry, I'm watching the boys today doing this podcast with you guys. Just don't let anybody in, okay, Huck? I'm sure it's the mailman. I'm getting a package today from ASIO Gear. I got me some boots, actually. And then so anyway, recovered him. It was a beautiful recovery. I had actually, by the time I had stalked him, moved in on him, he ran towards the other road. I was pretty close to the other road, so I only had about 100, 200-yard drag to get him back to the other road to my truck. So got my stuff together, drove around the other side, and kind of got my sled out and took care of him and did my little interview with him and all that. And it was just like a blessing from God. Like just last evening, I was Maddie was ready for me to get home. I was ready to get home. The boys were ready to get home. It worked out perfect. Kansas overall, pretty, I don't want to say disappointing, because I'm never really disappointed. Nothing, you always find positives and stuff. But from what I've talked to guys that it was there, same general time, I can only speak for the time I was there, pretty low numbers of people that saw deer. One of my friends actually hunted for a week, and he's a good hunter. Didn't see a racked buck the whole time he was there. There was some EHD in certain areas of Kansas. There was a plethora of 2-year-olds that I saw. I mean, I saw probably 7 or 8 2-year-old deer and younger. But as far as mature deer, we saw, we each saw one essentially. I saw the one I shot. Patrick saw the one he shot, or the one he saw the first morning, and then Dave saw a really nice one. The second morning we were there, he saw a real big one, but that was it. I'll get you guys the deer real quick here. I got him here mounted already, but so he's just he's not very wide. I think he was like 13 inches wide, but has a lot of points. And he's probably a 3-year-old deer. He's probably a deer that in a couple of years could have been a 200-inch deer, maybe, but that's it. But pretty nice deer. I'm happy with him. A lot of people saw that I boiled him out at the place, got all the meat off of him and all the brain matter out of him. You're legally supposed to do that in Kansas. Certain states, you got to look up your regulations. Some states let you bring it home as long as you take it straight to the processor or your taxidermist. It's just kind of one of those things where you have to read the regulations. But I just bring I got a propane stove that you would fry fish on or something. And then I got a big tub that you put water in, and I boil him out and get the meat and the brain matter off of him. Usually if you can find a garden hose and, bring your propane tank with you, you can take care of him pretty quick. And then when I got home, I did the whitening with the peroxide and ammonia on him, but that's it. That was the buck. So that's a tip I wanted to give you guys, that if you're going to hunt out of state, look into those regulations, or you can always call a game you can call a game warden and ask him, but call a taxidermist around there. Maybe say, hey man, if I give you $100, could you take care of him for me so I'm legal? Whatever the case may be. I don't know. I just do it myself. But that's the story of my Kansas buck. I think we oftentimes I was, like I said, do what needs to be done, not what you feel like doing. It's like, man, so that's like a good advice in life. Like if you just did everything you felt like doing all the time, you'd have no discipline in your life. You'd have, you got to create luck with discipline, and that's what I felt like I wasn't doing. I was just kind of going through the motions, not going through the motions, just like setting the spots that weren't going to work for this time of year. Like you had to get, and I knew this, you had to get out, and you had to do some scouting. I had to lay eyes on one, and then you had to get down and stalk them. Like they weren't going to come to you; they were with does locked up. So you had to find a spot that was overlooked that you could stalk in and make a move on the deer, and that's what I ended up doing. So it was a great hunt. It was fun. I learned a lot, learned an awful lot, gained some confidence. Every time you kill a deer out of state, you gain some more confidence in yourself and what you're doing. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video as much as I enjoyed making it. Yeah, I got I got another podcast coming out next week for you guys, and then got a pretty cool hunt I'm going on with Dan this next week as well that you guys are gonna probably absolutely love. So thanks for watching the show this evening, everybody, or listening to it whenever you were on here. Yeah, if you got any questions, make sure you leave them in the comment section. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, leave me a review on there. I always forget to say that. And then hit the subscribe button on YouTube for a whole bunch more stuff that's coming up this year still. I still got 2 more hunts to go on. One, the very last hunt of the year is a special one. You may think it's this one that's coming up that it's special too, but it's not. The next one, we're going to go somewhere very special. I don't know if we're going somewhere special, but who I'm taking special. So I cannot wait for that hunt. Let's put it this way: I'd give up all the other hunts this year to go on this one. But you guys will see that come after Christmas here. So, all right, everybody, I appreciate all the support. Keep those subscribes coming. I like to see that helps the channel out a lot, helps me out a lot, and I hope you guys get some value from it. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Talk to you later. Bye.